I wish we did, but we don't.
A lot of countries in Asia don't. Japan doesn't have daylight savings.
Yeah, meaning it gets light here at like 4:45 in the morning.
And the European Union is actually voting in March to stop doing daylight saving.
Yeah, but it takes 2 years or 3 years to get it through, so that takes some time.
Hey everyone, let's get started. Hello. So we have our other Amanda leading us today. Hi, Amanda. All right, and it looks
like can everybody hear me? I know sometimes my internet is sketchy.
Yeah, there was a tiny bit of a delay, but we'll work with it. My internet might be sketchy today too. So we'll cross our fingers for the best. I will mute myself, and whenever you're ready.
Okay. So I invite all of us to find a comfortable seat, possibly in Sukhasana or in our chairs. And let's take our palms up and place them on our knees. And let's start by scanning our bodies, starting from the bottom up, relaxing your feet and legs, finding a neutral pelvis, making sure we're not spilling our bowl forward or back, lengthening our spine, sitting up nice and tall. Let's roll our shoulders up and back, and lengthen our neck. Relax your jaw. And close our eyes and take our gaze to the third eye between our brow. And let's just find your breath. Breathing in and out, and in and out. Breathing in peace and calmness, and breathing out all the stresses of the day. Breathing in confidence and clarity, and breathing out any worry and doubt and anxiety you might have. Breathing in love and compassion, and breathing out anger or anything you're holding on to. Breathing in all the good vibes the universe has to offer, and breathing out any of the junk that you don't need going on in your mind. Just breathing in and out. In and out. And then I invite you to take your right hand over your heart and your left hand over your belly. And slowly blink your eyes open, bringing your focus back to the room. And know that you are right where you are supposed to be. You are right where you're supposed to be on your journey, on the mat and off. Namaste, beautiful yogis.
Namaste. Thank you so much. That was so nice. And the internet was perfect. It cooperated. Yay. Yeah, that was super beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny when the internet goes out. Does people have that happen sometimes when they're practicing like a video at home? That happened to me just this morning. I'm doing this meditation where I hold my arm this mudra. Actually, if anyone's coming to the mastermind this weekend, we're going to do this for 11 minutes. And I do it to this song. So it's very challenging. So I do it to the song that's around 11 minutes. And what will happen is my internet will go out like 3 or 4 minutes in. And I'm just like, oh, because I have this rule that I have to just stick with it. Like I can't reset the song or, just wait. And yeah, that's when you really see like how present and calm am I really in those situations. So it's pretty funny. So We have a lot of poses to look at, sort of like yesterday. So we're kind of in the thick of really like looking at bodies. Basically, that's just kind of where we're at in the training right now. We're going to look at a lot of poses. And again, I'm going to record videos for you guys on all these poses. So, you can kind of focus on watching the replays, which of course I encourage you to do, but you can also just kind of choose to laser in on each individual pose, watching the videos from me, which just give me a couple days because there's a lot of poses. So there'll be some up later today though. I wish you could be at the mastermind too, Jennifer. Yeah, if anyone last minute wants to come, let me know. I've been prepping for it all week and I'm very, very excited. It's a lot of new material that I'm teaching. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm filming lots of it. So hopefully we'll get it edited and it'll be available somehow. Haven't really figured that part out yet. Okay. So Amanda, since we're with you, do you want to give us your 3 takeaways, and then we can hear from the other students 3 takeaways, and then we can jump into just looking at bodies, and I have everything preloaded. And this is also a good moment because this is, separate from Monday's class. You guys, the Wednesday group, like what questions do you have, or are there specific things that came up in the uplifted alignment module that you guys want to ask questions about? This would be the moment to do that as well. So go ahead, Amanda.
Okay, so my first takeaway was just talking about yoga in general. When you said changing the body is so much easier than changing our mind patterns, and I just thought that was like an aha moment, because I know I started yoga for physical purposes, and I think most students do, and just realizing, kind of starting with the body, and then you realize once you do make those changes to your body, it's just the connection to the mind just automatically happens. So like I said, that was my first takeaway of realizing making changes to the body is easier. And I think once that starts, then your next step logically is your mind. My second takeaway had to do with the MFR, scanning the body in general. I look at it as, I'm a business person, and I look at financial statements and tax returns, and we say, push yourself away from the desk, kind of take yourself out of the spreadsheet. And that's what I felt like that was like, oh, that makes sense, kind of push yourself away and just look at anatomically what's going on, just looking at your student. And I loved the quote, I wrote it down, from John Barnes: hear about the pain, look elsewhere for the cause. I think that's so important. In today's society, we're just so quick to get a pill. Oh, my hand's numb, or oh, I have restless leg syndrome, I'm going to get a prescription for my leg. And I think there's a lot of people who don't think, why is that happening though? Like, is it really my leg that's causing the problem? Is it something else going on? So that was my second takeaway. And my third takeaway was about the Sanskrit itself as an instrument. I'm super intimidated by it, because I have problems with pronouncing English words. So, but I really liked that, the connection between, like you said, literally a connection between mind and body. And there is a benefit of using that and learning that language and incorporating that. So those were my 3 takeaways.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we have a Sanskrit module coming up that will go a little more into that. So that's awesome. I love it. Where's our other student teacher? Thank you, Amanda. Do you want to unmute?
Here I am, Monica.
Yay.
Okay, so my first takeaway was kind of a reminder for me as a massage therapist. It reminded me about the psoas, just talking about the psoas and how it's responsible for hip flexion and your pelvis and so many things. And people come in so much complaining of lower back pain to me too as a massage therapist, and I forget to work on their psoas. So that was a huge takeaway for me, kind of connected the 2 worlds for me. My next one is that if you forget everything else about alignment, just remember lengthen the spine. So that was
That's a really good
there's a lot of information. A lot of information. And I found it really fascinating that Sanskrit hadn't been changed in 25 centuries. So yeah, I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, and Stephanie just reminded me in the chat that Monday's group didn't have the Sanskrit video as like something you must have watched by Monday, but you guys actually did. So it's not coming up. You just watched it. So hence why I'm hearing takeaways about it. So excuse me, you guys, you are on the ball and I am not. So cool. So you guys, so you watched that video for today. Awesome. And it's funny just to add on to what you said about I don't know, we had a massage therapist on Monday's call and she said working on the psoas, like, yes, work on it more, but she was saying how it's like a fourth date, fourth appointment kind of thing that you work on. Cause it's I think people don't realize how deep it is, right? Like, but also it's intimate when you're getting in and working on someone psoas. You kind of need them to like almost like have their underwear off to really kind of get in there. At least that's been my experience. So it's definitely like you want to work on it, but it's not for everyone on like the first appointment type of thing. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and just educating people like what Amanda said, like you're feeling the pain here in your lower back, but this is where it's coming from, the front of your body. So a lot of times if I do go to work on the psoas or the abs or anything, a client won't understand why. And so just educating, bringing that educational part in. It's cool.
Yeah, totally. That's so hard with massage. And I think it ties into yoga and everything we're talking about today, where people are like, my traps hurt, so just work on my traps. And you know, sometimes it's hard because you have to give them that, but you're like, well, this is stemming from a different issue in the low back or a different part of the body. So yeah. Okay, awesome. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. I think you have one more to share, or did you do all three?
My Sanskrit, so not being changed in 25 centuries.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was that. My husband studied the Quran, so he said it's the same as that. I've never looked into it, but I thought that was amazing. And then it's sung like the Quran is. That's beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah, so now that I know that we've all had the Sanskrit module, let me know questions people have about that. Simona says she has a million questions on these topics and wants to dive deeper. So let me know what the questions are so we can start diving deeper. Did everyone kind of get, like, I think the big takeaway from the Sanskrit lecture is that it's a vibrational language. Did that make sense to everyone? So, and the other thing that was not in the video, but that I've been talking about more and more is, she said it's sung, and that's true, it's sung, but I would think of it more as being like vibrated, because singing to me like implies like you have a nice singing voice, or singing almost to me implies like a performance of some sort. And with chanting or even just saying these words, that's really not what it's about. It's not a performance. So when we say Om, for example, I don't think of that as singing. I think of that as like taking a huge in-breath and then vibrating those vowels, right? And feeling that effect. So yeah, so it's not bad to say singing. I would just like invite us to reframe it a tiny bit. And then the idea is that when you do vibrate, right, because 60% of our body is water, you're almost like having this effect at the molecular level, and your voice is healing for you. So you vibrating or saying a mantra or these words, your unique voice is healing to your unique energy body, to your unique body of water. So it doesn't really matter what it sounds like from the outside, or if you think it sounds pretty or not. Just know that your unique sound current is extremely healing for your unique body. And I think when I made that shift, I started like all of a sudden embracing chanting a lot more. Okay, so Simona put a bunch of questions. How long does it take to change behavior after starting physical exercise? The sustainability. Would one have to do physical exercise every day or on most days to have it have an effect on the mind, behavior, And once physical exercise is stopped, how long will it take for the effect to wear off? So all of this, so these are all great questions, but I think it's really, really personal, right? Like I know people who, for example, maybe they go to yoga for 10 years and the first 5 years, like it was just about a workout. And then, you know, in year 6, like some specific teacher said something about, you know, and I remember this moment for myself in yoga, right? It's like, I was just going and I knew I liked it, but I wasn't really cognizant of the, you know, more mental or emotional benefits that I was receiving. And then a teacher said something in pigeon pose, right? About having awareness that you're not your thoughts. And then there was just like this big click moment. And this is what's really exciting about being a teacher, is because people are coming to your class and you don't know why, and maybe they're just coming for the physical. And again, this practice is so powerful. This is, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to say this on a recording, but I almost think being a yoga teacher is like being a drug dealer. It's like your product is so good that like, even if you sort of butcher it or don't do a good job, and even if your student doesn't really get it, like even the worst class, like the practice itself is so good and powerful, just like these ancient teachings, like it's amazing that you don't have to stress too much, because they're, you know, like they're going to have a positive, ideally, experience, like, and have some sort of awareness or mental sort of shift, even if they're not cognizant of it. Does that make sense? Like they might just leave class and they're like a little bit more relaxed. It's a tiny bit, tiny, right? So, but then sometimes people have these big epiphanies, right? So how long does it take to change the behavior after starting physical? Like it so depends, right? Is someone open to change? Where are they at in their life? Again, it could be like 5 years in and then all of a sudden something changes. And when we're talking about sustainability and do we have to do physical exercise every day or on most days, for it to have an effect on the mind behavior all the time. This is where, like, in a group of students, and I'm harping on this more and more, in a group of students, right, I'm going to tell them, just come to the mat as much as you can, right? Like, anything you can do is better than nothing. And I'm going to tell that to all of you too, but like, since we're a group of teachers, I really think a daily practice is 100% necessary. That's been my experience, like getting into a state of the neutral mind, the meditative mind, once a day for however long you can do. I think an hour is really nice. Not that you need to meditate for an hour, but like some sort of hour-long self-care practice is really necessary. I don't think once a week you're going to be able to sort of stay in that neutral mind or intuitive space or whatever we want to call it, to not be so reactionary in your daily life if it's like a once a week practice. So again, we don't want to tell our students like all or nothing, or yourself, right? Always something is better than nothing. But since you're now all like a group of teachers or a group of people who's taking this to the deepest level, my direct experience has been it has to be a daily practice. And once the physical exercise is stopped, how long will it take for the effect to wear off? I mean, that's also very different for every single person, right? I go to a yoga studio near my house, and it's like a big chain yoga studio, and everyone's super zenned out at the end of class. And then like this woman who was practicing 3 mats for me, she almost like ran me over in the parking lot after. She's like road rage, like back behind the wheel, like gotta go, you know? So for her, like the effects lasted like the staircase to her car, or maybe the staircase to turning her cell phone on, right? Someone else who's, you know, trying more consciously to bring these teachings into their daily life, trying to slow their breathing down throughout the rest of the day. You know, it doesn't mean you can't turn your cell phone on, but you're like, okay, you know, you're a little bit more aware of this different energetic space that you can inhabit. Well, maybe it lasts all day until you do your next practice tomorrow. So, so yeah, there's really not like diagnostic answers to any of those questions, Simona, although that's, you know, it's a really good question. So would saying the English words make us feel the same way as saying the words in Sanskrit? So this is another thing with your students. And so first of all, don't stress about pronouncing all the pose names perfectly, right? Just do your best, just do your best. But when we start talking about mantra, again, with your students, you're going to tell them, just do your best. The pronunciation doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. The deeper I've gone into all of this with mantra, the pronunciation really does matter a lot because it's a vibratory language. So if your tongue's not hitting the roof of your mouth, you know, in the right way, or, you know, you're taking just half an inhale when you should be taking a full inhale, or you're not vibrating the mantra from your navel pulling in and like a specific part. Like this weekend in the mastermind, we're working with a mantra where you go kar, and kar is about, it's connected to the third chakra. So you need to pull your navel in. You can even be visualizing yellow. So it gets very nuanced. So there, and it's car, like with a K-A-R, not car, like something that you drive, right? So all those little details become important when you start going deeper into mantric language, because it's a vibrational language, and it's physically you're playing your chakras, or you're activating different energy centers in the body as you chant these words. And Andrea said even cats purring causes a healing vibration. Yeah. Oh, so nice. Okay, so I will keep looking in the chat. Sorry, there's a lot of really good stuff that came up in here. If the TAs or someone's been reading it and wants to tell me if there's something I should be answering before we look at poses, let me know. And Simone is asking if there's research being done on the questions you ask. I'm not sure. I think it would be one of those things that's just very hard to do research around, unfortunately. Yeah, Isabel says it makes sense to me. I've always heard that it doesn't matter how to pronounce, but in my mind, I'm thinking that it does matter, right? Yeah, so that's kind of where like what you tell your students and what I tell teacher trainees is, you know, it's like a little bit different because people are already self-conscious enough, right? And again, it's like, you know, we're probably getting 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of the benefit, or even just taking time to chant as opposed to think a million things, right, has huge benefit. So we don't want to get too like harped in on the details, but okay. So let's switch to what would be a good place online to learn Sanskrit. I think people look in the Facebook group because people have posted some really cool websites where you can also play and it will like say it for you. I know I posted one for the very first chant that we went over together. So yeah, look in the Facebook group for some resources. I'm sure you guys will all share them with one another. Okay, so Amanda, do you want to go first with looking at poses and hopefully, okay. So what did you want to look at first?
Well, I have one in every folder, so we can start with plank, I guess.
Okay, let's start with plank.
And it was, I have, maybe it was just me. I found like I immediately looked at mine and started saying, "Hey, this is what's wrong with mine." But so I have one of mine listed for Chaturanga. But let's start with Lauren L. in plank.
Okay. Okay, cool. So Lauren is your beautiful student. What are you going to, well, you can tell us first what you see, and then you can tell us what you'd tell her in terms of a cue.
So what I see is she's got awesome shoulder over elbow over wrist alignment, but her thoracic spine is in extension, right? Flexion. Is in flexion. So yeah, she's over, like it looks like this is where I would say, okay, she's about ready to go into Chaturanga if she was doing a sun salutation. So I would tell her to push her energy through her heels, kind of, I don't want to say rock back, but I think if she pushes her energy to her heels, that might just do that, rock her back a little bit to where her, she's not curving over her shoulders.
Yeah. So
the other thing you probably, I don't know. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say,
I was going to say,
oh, no, okay, go ahead. Keep going.
like, I feel like her stomach is engaged. So I don't know if saying, you know, pull your belly up and in would help. That's why, to me, it's the cues would be more about pushing her heels back, maybe dropping her tailbone, but it's more about that moving back a little bit in the body.
So I really like where you're going. So remember how we talked about on Monday's call. So let's talk about it again here, like how it's really great if we can either cue the front and the back of the body simultaneously. And the other thing that's really great if we can do it is to cue directionally, meaning that we cue them to do one thing, but give them like a counterpoint or an opposite place of which they're moving away from. Yeah. So you kind of have the first half where you're saying, press your heels back energetically, which I really like. So if we're thinking like of lines of energy, where would if we press her heels back, what would be the other end of that energetic line?
Her head.
Sorry if I'm not answering. Her head, yeah. Or what more specifically do we want to maybe have come forward?
Her chest.
Her heart, yeah, her chest. So maybe you could say, press your heels back and glide your heart forward. I'm just making this up, but how do you feel about that? Like, press your heels back, send your heart forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Because like what she's doing, and this is rare actually, I think, like what's so amazing with Lauren is her abdominals are engaged. And do we think her lumbar spine is in its like nice kind of neutral curve? She's like protecting her low back.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think
right? So segment 2, it's like check plus, right? Remember, you know, the spine moves as a unit, right? So in having such great engagement in segment 2 and really neutralizing her lumbar spine and having so much stability there, she has a little bit too much of a flexion or rounding in the thoracic, right? And that's what as your teacher, you're kind of trying to get her to even out. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could I think that would be the perfect cue. Send your heels back. And because if we just tell her, send your heart forward, okay, we could say that. There's nothing wrong with saying that. But do you guys kind of get like how it's so much more powerful for your student to say, press the heels back and glide the heart forward? Because all of a sudden the body's now getting longer and we're moving in 2 directions at once. Okay, and now let's bring in the other piece of cueing the front and the back of the body at the same time. So we're going to say, press your heels back, glide your heart forward. And I think some people are already helping you out or hinting at this in the chat. So if we're talking about the heart moving forward, and that's kind of the front of the body, right? Or we say your sternum moves forward, heart moves forward, whatever we want to say. What could we cue that would help her find that same action on the back of the body? And people help her out in the
shoulder blades down, hugging your shoulder blades down and back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, think of moving your shoulder blades down and back. Yeah, awesome. Cool, really nice. Do you want to look at a chaturanga?
Sure, I actually picked mine.
Okay,
as one.
love it.
But I have somebody else too. We could pick either me or Christian J. I didn't know what the rules were. If you could pick yourself.
No, it's great. Let's do you. Why not? And then maybe we can switch to the other student teacher because I'd like to look at a couple chaturangas. Okay, so you're seeing yourself from the outside, which is always a fun experience.
Right. So the first thing I noticed was that as my neck alignment. I'm not looking down, I'm looking out ahead, and because of that, my neck is let me think of the correct word. It would be extended. So
cervical
I would tell
extension.
So I would tell myself to look down at the top of my mat or down at my mat as opposed to having my gaze out. And then I think I did a pretty good job of keeping my shoulders in, but I don't know if I need to engage my belly more or what, because I feel like I'm a little low in the chest. So I need to, and maybe that's just also lack of arm strength, or maybe it's the same cue of wrapping my shoulders down and back to kind of lift my chest just a little bit so that I feel like I'm down too low to the ground. And so if I again, to your point, a front body and a back body would be gaze down to lengthen my neck, and then wrapping my shoulders back would maybe bring my chest up a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah, I love how you just cued the front and back of the body. And then, yeah, what you're doing is really common. Like I see this in Chaturanga so much, is that people lower down past their elbows, right? So if we look at like the line of her elbows, it's kind of up here. So she's kind of dipping, she's going too far down before she moves to do her up dog. So that's something where you can just, as you go down, you just remind yourself, you don't have to go down as far as you think you do, right? It's just kind of a proprioception trick. I think her hands are in a great placement. I think you launched forward, but I think you could even launch forward a tiny bit more, right? Because if we look, are your elbows over your wrists?
No.
Yeah, almost, really close. And then if we look, like what we're looking for in the launch forward, so people, we lower down from plank, and then there's this launch forward that has to happen off the toes. And we can see you're kind of on your toes. I'm sure if we look at some other photos, maybe we'll see someone, but it's almost like you just want to be on like the last two tarsals of each toe, right? And the heel should be like farther forward, because you kind of do that. It's like a forward, it's like a thrusting yourself forward in space, like your whole body just shoots forward. So I think you could just think of launching off your feet a little bit more, and that will naturally bring the elbow over the wrist. Someone said her lumbar is in extension. Lengthening the neck would help with that. And I think more than if her lumbar is in a little bit of extension, it's because her booty is a little higher than her head, right? Because it's really hard to lower the whole body down in one straight line. So do we see, it's kind of hard to see from the angle of this photo, but can you kind of see how her booty is higher than the rest of her spine? So she's lowering with her chest first, which also explains why her chest is getting so low, right? So it's almost like she wants to keep her head and her chest in line with where her booty is, right? And then should be more in one straight line. Chaturanga is the hardest pose, you guys. So remember, let's talk about all the modifications, right? You can have people drop to their knees. I'll go through those in a lot of detail in the video I make. But thanks for doing this one. And Amanda, who was the other person you wanted to look at besides yourself?
In Chaturanga, it was Kristen J.
Kristen with a C or a K? K?
Yeah, with a K.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Awesome. Okay, I love this one. What do you want to tell her? Or you can tell us what you see and then what you want to tell her, however you want to do it.
So what I would tell her is she needs to roll her shoulders back, her blades back and down on her spine, and hug her elbows into her body. She's doing more of a push-up move, and we want to be more in line. She's got the elbow over her wrist, but it needs to hug into her body. And then I'd also tell her to engage her belly. So that way that would help her. She's got over extension there in her lumbar. Looks like she's set, yeah, right there. So I think if she pulled her belly up and engaged her belly more, that would correct that. And then as far as, I would also, when I tell her about her shoulders or her elbows hugging, I'd also make sure to continue to lengthen the spine, because she's not as bad as I was, but her neck she's moving down, and she's got a lot of pressure there on her neck.
Yeah, and Linda G is saying, should she maybe drop her knees, right? So we don't know, but a lot of times when we see this really extreme lumbar curve, it's telling us that we can tell her, draw your abs up and in, and the cue for the back of the body that would go well with that would be lengthen your tailbone back, right? To get this excess lordosis under control. But it might be that she just doesn't have the abdominal strength, right? In which case dropping the knees would be a good call, right? So sometimes when you see people like this, it's a a sign that like maybe a modification is needed. I just want to challenge you before we move on. If we're going to cue from the ground up, is there anything like in the way that her limbs are in contact with the floor that you'd change? And people help her out in the chat in terms of where her hands, foot placement or foot placement.
Yeah, she needs to have her, well, I can't tell if her feet are hip widths apart or if they're together. They probably, I don't, if they should be hip widths apart. So if they are, then maybe they're exactly like right next to each other. And then her hands need to be spread wide, spread wide fingers directly underneath her shoulders. And she's off the mat a little bit there.
And that's what people are saying in the chat too. It looks like her arms are just kind of wide, like her hands are kind of far apart from one another. Almost like, and that makes sense because if her arms are so spread apart, like her arms are as wide as the mat instead of under her shoulders, it makes sense that she wouldn't be able to keep her elbows close into her body, right? So this is where it's like cueing from the ground up is so important, because if we were going to have her press back to down dog or do this again or whatever, we could say, get your elbows closer to your shoulders, get your elbows closer to the shoulder. But unless we fix the stance, the placement of her hands first from the very bottom up, she won't be able to do that, right? So does that make sense to everyone? Why we have to ask her to move her hands before she'll be able to find that sweet alignment of the elbows staying closer into the sides of the body. Okay, cool. Monica, our other student teacher, did you have anyone in Chaturanga?
I did her too.
Okay.
I did.
All right.
Yeah.
Popular pick. Okay. Yeah, and it's really great. Like, Kristen, thank you for posting this photo, because you're going to see this a lot, right? It's really common because most people, I mean, even people who have awesome core strength, I mean, Chaturanga is really, really, really hard. And of course, when you tell people that they're going down, right, they're going to want to do it with their head, right? They kind of do this like swan, I don't know, it's like a bird going down and then they go up to up dog. And it's, so yeah, so the modification, and let's see, can we find someone? Ooh, we have a video. I was pretty sure when I was looking at these earlier, oops.
I was going to say Chloe D has a good modification.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, I was too far down. Oh, yay, Chloe D. Woo! Okay, we like this modification. So another thing that we, that I think we should talk about, and maybe I'll stop the screen share for a sec, but why I really like this is because we can see that if, like, imagine she was standing, like we just all of a sudden put the floor right here, and we just imagined her flipped over and we looked at her spine as if she was upright. I think she looks like she's in pretty much in neutral spinal curves. What do you guys think? Yeah, which is so awesome. You know how hard it is to maintain neutral spinal curves in this position, right? So it's like we're doing modified Chaturanga right now, but it's still Tadasana, right? We're still aiming for that Tadasana alignment. She's squeezing a block between her thighs. Yeah, pretty like neutral-ish pelvis, I would say. Pretty neutral, maybe a tiny bit anterior, but not a lot. Her head is in line with her tailbone. Her legs are engaged and her elbows are close into pretty close into her body. So when she does this, she's really truly building strength, the abdominal strength and the arm strength she'll need for full Chaturanga later on. So you can always teach the modified for like the first couple sun salutes. So let's go over the ways that we can modify Chaturanga. So one would be to drop the knees and to do this variation. What are some other ways? What are other modifications? And these are all in the manual. So if you just want to look at the manual, you can. But you guys
chest to ground one.
Okay, so this is there's one controversial one we're going to talk about. One really simple: lower all the way to the ground. Right, lower all the way to the ground instead of
chest
Chaturanga halfway down. Yeah, straps are great. There's I think we link up a class where I use a strap. Do that class in the syllabus. It's so awesome. The other modification that is often taught is what's called knees, chest, chin. Who's done this or heard a teacher say knees, chest, chin? Yeah. Pretty common. I don't like knees, chest, chin. Why do you guys think I don't like knee suggestion?
Your spine gets
Your neck. Overextension. Yeah.
Overextension in the neck. And it kind of, and neck, we know lumbar too. So with knees, chest, chin, you drop your knees and then you just plant your chest on the ground. And so your booty's up. It's kind of like doing the worm. You know, those like disco dancers who do the worm. That's what I think of with knees, chest, chin. So the lumbar comes into extreme extension. So does the cervical. And does it like build strength for full chaturanga later? What do you guys think? Like, I mean, maybe a little bit in your tricep, but like not so much because it doesn't really require core strength.
I'm freezing.
Right?
She freeze up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I froze.
Yeah, she might be a little frozen.
Yeah, I think she might be.
She got so mad about knees, chest, chin that she broke the internet.
I broke the internet. It hasn't kicked me out. Am I back yet? Quite yet. Okay, it looks like I'm back. But I think you guys got it, right? So it's taking cervical into extreme extension, lumbar into extreme extension. And where the internet froze me was I was asking you guys, do you think that doing knees, chest, chin actually helps people build the strength to do full chaturanga later?
Probably not. It works on the arms, but you're not engaging your stomach. You're not going up your belly.
I would say tiny bit triceps, tiny bit, but not really. Okay. So again, you can go out if you love the knees, chest, chin variation, or, you know, everyone gets to do what they want to do, but my presentation, or I'm not a fan. I'm totally not a fan. And I'm really a fan of the modification Chloe was showing, which is a much harder one to cue, unfortunately, right? Because you have to tell people, zipper your inner thighs together, you know, bring your elbows super close in, keep your body in one straight line, draw your abs up and in as you lower to the floor. So there's a lot of words you can use, I think, that are helpful. Like, I like to tell people, like, visualize a little fire under your mat, right? That's like gonna burn your belly. And you're lowering down as slow as possible, because you know that people's lumbar is hypermobile and that the lumbar and the navel are gonna wanna just like down first for folks, yeah? So, okay. So there's lots of modifications. Chaturanga is advanced. It is really challenging. I do like 3 chaturangas with correct alignment, correct form, and I'm pooped, like exhausted, need to take a nap. It's that hard. So if you haven't done the video in the syllabus that's linked up where you do it with the strap, do that and you'll feel how hard it actually is to do correctly. Like you're quivering, you're shaking. I also like to tell, again, like now we're among, like if you're not quivering and shaking when you do chaturanga, you're not doing it right, right? Because it's that hard. So we're cognizant of this. Maybe we don't want to ask people to do 1 million chaturangas throughout the course of a class, since it's one of the most challenging postures. It's very difficult for people to do correctly. We're putting people at risk for injury because we kind of know they're not going to do it right? Which is like, means that, you know, not so great for the elbow joint. Lumbar spine is potentially going to be an extreme extension, as is the cervical. They're maybe going to lower too far down, kind of like Amanda when she looked at herself, which right now isn't a big deal. But if she does like 20 chaturangas like that a day for 10 years, one day she's going to have like wrist and elbow pain, right? So, okay. Let's talk about, Jamie says she's doing it and she's shaking all over. Yeah, that's how I think. If you're not shaking, I don't know if you're really in the right position, because the right position is brutal. It really requires so much core strength and arm strength and body awareness. And a lot of people, before we move on, forget that launch forward, right? They're in plank and they just lower. So is everyone clear on the launch forward? And I'll show this in the video that I make for you guys. But you need to move forward. So there needs to be a little launch. Your heels move forward, and it's like you almost push off your feet in order, because if you don't do that, you're not going to get the sweet alignment of the elbow over the wrist. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that launch forward is the missing link. Okay. Let's hear from Monica and let's go into a different pose. Yeah. Blast off, says Jamie. Exactly. That's really how you should think about it. All right. So moving on from plank and chaturanga, Monica, where do you want to take us into a different pose?
Parivrtta Utkatasana.
Parivrtta Utkatasana. Okay.
And looking at Lori M.
Lori M. Okay. Sweet. Okay. And let me share it with you guys. Okay.
Wait, sorry, my computer just froze on me.
It's okay.
There we go. Okay. All right. So first thing I'm noticing is that she needs to bring her toes, her big toes to touch, and then move her heels slightly apart.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So her knees, I'm noticing that her knees are not over her ankles, and I'm wondering if she sits back more than she thinks she has to, that will work it out there. So she
yeah,
needs
and
to
not just that. Do you think the knees are in line with one another?
No, I think the left knee is a bit back more. So again, if she brought her toe, let's see.
The right knee's forward a little bit and the left knee is back. This is very common when we come into, yeah. Okay, keep going.
Okay. So I think that going on to like segment 2, she needs to lengthen the tailbone back and square the hips a little bit. And then twist more. Mm-hmm.
So just a trick, you guys, that you can know is you can tell people in this pose to look down at their own knees. And if one knee is forward of the other, it's usually a sign that the pelvis is a little bit twisted and that the ASIS, the hips, are also not in one straight line. Does that kind of make sense to people? Can you visualize that? How if like one knee is jutting out, that's signaling a pelvic misalignment as well. Yeah. But we're cueing from the ground up. So we would say, look down at your knees and can you pull your right knee back in line with your left? And that usually will help square the hips.
Okay. And then her twist, I think it needs to be more like from the navel area, not so much in the upper.
Yeah, nice. So in all our twists, and this is what's really hard, is we want to draw the navel in. So I think if it's like a fishing line, I'm like pulling my navel in, so that the twist can happen more from the thoracic spine. And in the lumbar spine, the lower back, we're just finding stability, right? We just want the lumbar in neutral so we can rest our beautiful T set for high T on the sacrum. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Also, I don't know if it's just the angle, but her torso could be a little bit more in between her legs, her knees, like the whole torso. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. Okay. And I would lower the hands to heart center. So, and let's see, try to create more space between her shoulders and her ears.
Ooh, nice.
And let's see, and just trying to get that right elbow on the outside of the left knee. So I don't know how to say that correctly, but those are my cues for Lori.
Yeah, and I think all your cues are spot on, and I think everything you're saying is right. What I would also caveat is that she might be someone who also just needs a modification, right? Like if she could do all those things that you're talking about, that would be great. But some people, even though we want, toes touching, heels slightly apart in chair, some people just need to take chair with feet hip width apart. Oh. They just have wide hips, bigger bodies. It has that's just the way it has to be. And then we still want the toes pointing forward and the heels behind the widest part of the foot. So I don't know for her. So I think you did a great job. I'm just adding on now that some people just need that modification. And if they're there and maybe they have the legs a little bit wider, and they can't turn, right? They could just do an open twist, or not, right? So instead of coming down here, maybe they just need to focus on length in the spine and pulling the navel in, keeping the hips square, and finding rotation in the upper body. So maybe it looks like this for them, or for a beginner class, right? As opposed to coming into the full variation. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Cool. Who else do you want to look at, Monica? Let's do another one, and it can be in this folder or a different folder.
Plank pose again.
And can we do something other than, do you have a different one?
Oh, actually, I did. I think I had, I did, but I don't know what I did with it. Maybe you can just pull one up and I'll go for it.
Okay, we'll put you on the spot. People will help you. Let's look at, or actually, let's look at another, didn't we have revolved triangle for today? Or maybe it was this one.
Yeah, we did. We had revolved triangle.
Maybe I just don't have it. Okay, so I really want to do revolved triangle with you guys. Let's do this one in the meantime, Parivrita Parsva Konasana. And then let's just look at all the twists together. I think is nice. You said you had someone in this folder, Amanda?
Yeah, which one are you in? Which folder?
Oh, sorry. I forgot that I stopped my share. I am in Parivrita Parsva Konasana. So it's the lunge twist.
Oh, maybe I don't have one in that folder.
Okay, I'm going to pick someone then.
I don't have one in the folder. Unless I wrote it down wrong. Oh, I do. Yes. I have two. So you want to look at Esther R.
Okay, cool. And someone just put in the chat, is the goal to always get the elbow to the outside of the knee? Well, again, it depends, right? Depends. Maybe that's your goal, or maybe your goal is lengthen the spine. So, right, it's up. Am I at the right photo for you?
No, hold on. Yeah, we can do that one.
Okay, cool.
Because I loved her leg warmers.
Yes, they are very cute.
So, so starting from the ground up, the thing I noticed was she's got the knee over the ankle, and I think her stance is wide enough. I think though, if we maybe tell her to straighten her back knee a little, if she can. I mean, it's fine to have straighten the back knee, and then that might help move her upper body forward, because if we move back this way, then naturally she might tilt a little bit forward.
Yeah, and think about what was that same cue that you used in plank pose, because I think it might be helpful here, the same idea. So you could tell her straighten the knee.
Yeah, push your inner
heel back. Push back through your heel, right? Yeah, because I think if we just stay straight, like I know it's crazy, but if we cue from the ground up, like ground would be, if the ground were, I don't know. But I like to say energy out the back heel, press through the heel, legs stick straight. It's like, if you can just get her really pressing through the heel, the knee might naturally resolve itself, right? We don't know, but it might. So, not that you can't say the knee too, I just start talking about the heel first. Okay, cool. So we're gonna ask her to have energy out that back heel. That may or may not straighten the knee, and then we may have to say something about the knee. Okay, keep going.
Well, I mean, I feel like the stomach's engaged and she's got a good twist. Maybe a little tension in the neck. So I don't know, continue, but I mean, I feel the upper body looks pretty good as far as, like I said, I don't feel like she doesn't have a kink in her neck or anything. It looks like she's got a good spinal alignment there.
Yeah, what about segment 2? What do you think's going on in the pelvis?
Maybe.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Maybe what I was going to say is like bringing her thighs into her midline a little bit more. Kind of squeeze.
Squeeze the inner thighs together. Why would squeeze the inner thighs together be a good cue? It's hard to tell from the photo, but I think her left hip, and this is very
the left hip is too far bent. The left hip. Yeah, I feel like the left hip is, I don't know how to say it correctly, but it needs to move, get in alignment. I can see that it's out of alignment. So I feel like squeezing her inner thighs together will fix that.
What do people in the chat think? Is the left hip forward, back, too high, or too low?
Forward?
Is her left hip too forward? Too high? It's too high, right? It's too high. It's maybe a little bit too forward, but to me it looks too high. Like, so if we had her put her hands, or we're able to touch her hip bones right now, her left hip would be higher than her right. Like the waistband of her pants would be at a diagonal, right? So if she squeezes her inner thighs together a little bit, and also thinking of getting a lot of energy out this back heel would help, she'll be able to have the hips in line, right? And this is for pretty much all of us when we come into a twist like this. The right hip, in this scenario, if we were twisting to the left, the right hip is going to drop, right? Just think about it in your own body. You're coming around, this right hip drops. So then once you're there, you need to squeeze the inner thighs together and pull it back a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, good eye, you guys. But other than that, I think that's it. Everything else looks amazing. She might need to move her right foot away from the midline a few inches. So she's saying a wider stance, take the back foot wider. Yeah, that could maybe also help her square the hips a little bit. Yeah. So now, are her hips like, is one hip so much higher than the other that they're like totally not? No, super subtle, right? This is now like a refinement, right? But it's just fun to be aware of in your own body, because I do it every single time I twist. I have to make that correction on myself after I'm in the twist, right? It's like, okay, I came into the super deep twist, but my hips, like the hip on the extended back leg is completely dropped. So yeah, that's where you engage inner thighs, engage pelvic floor, and slurp it all up and in, and try to level it out. Okay, cool. Thanks for looking at this one, you guys, even though you weren't totally totally ready. So I think we did. So we did have twisted triangle, right? Maybe I just didn't have it pulled up yet. Okay, let's talk about twisted triangle, because this pose is so juicy. So either Monica or Amanda, did you have someone in here that you wanted to look at?
I did. One of the things I first noticed with twisted triangle is there were several of us who I think are twisting the wrong way. If your right leg's in front and your left's back and your triangle, you should be twisting with your left hand down on a block. But yeah.
So Jackie's twisting the wrong way, right? Or wrong, but not the direction we want to be going in. Does this make sense to everyone else? Yeah. Okay. So that's a good first step. Who did you pick to look at? She's just doing regular triangle.
Sharon G.
Sharon G. Okay. This is a really juicy pose, and this is another one that I think is one of the hardest poses in the book. Ooh. Okay. So what do you want to talk about here?
So again, I like the fact that she was modified, like she used her modification if she needed to, but what I would tell her is to shorten, it's okay to shorten the stance with twisted triangle especially. I would tell her, so she's twisted in the wrong way, so I'd have her shorten her stance, and then to make sure to keep her pelvis in line, to kind of extend up and out when you bend over, and then drop her left hand down. And if she can't reach all the way to the ground, this is a great pose, I think, for a block, because it's a, like you call it, a juicy one. I think it's a very difficult pose. So use the block there, right? And then the twist with the modification of the other arm is great to keep it, to keep your hand on your low back to ensure that, hey, my pelvis is square. And then I would tell her to have her take her gaze down to the top of her mat, so that with her if she's going to keep her neck neutral, or she can, you know, keeping your neck neutral, look to the other side of the room as she's twisting.
Awesome. So yeah, I agree. We love this modification. So having people keep their hand on their sacrum like that is really, really helpful. But she just wants to be doing it with the other arm, right? So she wants the left hand on the sacrum and the right hand to be on the floor on a block. And we want her to dip the chin in. I think her hips, you know, they look pretty square-ish, probably again because she has the hand and she's doing the modification. She's not coming into the full rotation, in which case she'd be rotating towards the mountains, right? If she were going to come into the full expression of the pose. Just while we're looking at her here, I think we talked about this with Parsvottanasana, but you can tell her to think of pulling her front right thigh in towards the socket, right? Or drawing her right hip back and moving her left hip forward. And this is where, like, one of the reasons I think revolved triangle is tricky is because it's actually revolved pyramid. Did anyone have that epiphany? Or can we have the epiphany together now? The stance we want the stance we want the feet to be in is the stance that we take for all the poses where our hips are neutral, right? We want the hips square to the front of the mat when we do this, or to, you know, she's folding forward, so they're going to be pointing down, but the hips are square. We're not in external rotation like we are in triangle pose, right? So let's review. When we're in external rotation facing the side wall, we have all our poses: warrior two, side angle, triangle, right? That's all those poses with the heel to arch alignment. When we're have the hips in neutral, we want the hips like headlights facing towards the front of the room. We have our warrior one, right? Our low lunge, our high lunge, our pyramid pose, Parsvottanasana, which we looked at on Monday. And what twisted triangle is really twisting when you're in Parsvottanasana. This makes sense to people? I'm going to stop to share for a second so I can see people's faces. Does that make sense? So yeah. It's just kind of named wrong, in my opinion. So if I could like go back years and talk to the ancient yogis, I'd be like, hey, we need to rename this one because it's going to really confuse people because we're not in triangle in our legs. So that's going to require a lot of re-education with your students, right? Because it makes sense, right? When you just hear like twisted triangle, it's like, oh, well, I come into triangle pose with heel to arch alignment, and then I just twist. Okay, like who can, very, very, very hard to keep the sacrum level. It's just, yeah, it's really hard. So you want to have those railroad track stance, right? It's really hard to balance even if you try that. So just something to be aware of, you know? And Muriel says, just to be clear, twisted triangle is the same as revolved triangle. Yeah. Parivrtta just means revolved, twisted. Yeah. But it's really more like twisted pyramid pose. And Rachel says, I'm so thankful for my Iyengar training with this pose. They drummed that in. Okay, good. I'm glad the Iyengars are on my side and I'm not a crazy person by myself here. So Tessa says, what about the feet alignment? Are they both face forward? So the lower body is literally in pyramid pose, Parsvottanasana. So the front foot is 10 toes forward, heel behind the widest part of the foot. The back foot is at that 45-degree angle, and the feet are as wide apart as the hips. So however wide a student's hips are, that's how wide the feet are, right? And they're on like railroad tracks, right? So we're not in heel to heel alignment. We're not in heel to arch alignment. Wide, yeah? And then I really love the variation with the hand on the sacrum, like she showed. Another thing you can do is have them, you know, find their hip crease and think of kind of pulling it back as they come down. And you can tell them to pause here with lengthen the spine, put the hand on the sacrum, right? Or put both hands on the sacrum, and then left hand down. It's tricky. You always have to think with this one. The opposite arm as foot comes down. And then maybe they just stay here, or maybe they start to find some rotation in the thoracic. So you can say twist it, maybe find a little bit. Inhale, find length. Exhale, twist, and, just in the upper back, keeping your belly button pointing towards the ground, right? Inner thighs squeezing together. And then maybe this arm lifts, or maybe it doesn't. So with a lot of these poses, whether it's chaturanga, or this pose, which I think is one of the hardest in the book, a lot of successful teaching has to do with teaching it in stages and telling people that they can drop off at any point, right? So if the spine is still long and you feel like you can balance a T-set on your sacrum, begin to find a little bit of rotation in the upper back. Squeeze your inner thighs together, keep pressing down through the, ball mound and heel of the foot, suction your legs towards one another. Stay here. If, you want to move on, hand down, hand up, right? So you kind of like teach all these stopping off points for people instead of just like everyone has to get there right away. Okay, light bulbs are going off. Yay, 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 yay. And I find this twist really difficult in the shoulder, says Susie. Me too. I can't really do this pose very well. So it probably doesn't look that good in the manual because it's very, 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 very challenging for me. Especially if you're a flexi, it's challenging, or you have a hypermobile low back, because that low back wants to move for you, right? So it's like you got to think you're frozen sort of from the floating ribs down in order to do this with, what I'm going to say is correct alignment. Okay, cool. So we'll look more at this. Like just looking at Renee, she has her hand on the ground. She's rotating, but we can see her hips aren't level and they're not square. Oops, I forgot. I'm not sharing. Hold on. Pause. Can everyone see how Renee's hips are not level and not square? Is there anyone who can't see that or doesn't understand what we're talking about? Because again, I'm going to do detailed videos on all the poses. You have the manual about all the poses. So this, like when we're together about that, like now it's about practicing cueing and practicing your body reading skills. Yeah, so Tessa says, looks like she could use a block. So we'd give her a block. What else? Just like, let's stay with this for just a moment, just because I randomly came here. How do we feel about her? Ground up, right? So look at the soles of her feet. Okay, yay, awesome, you guys. So you're saying shorter stance, right? Shorten stance and maybe a little bit wider too, right? Shorten stance and maybe a little bit wider too. So maybe her foot ends up like there. Whoa, right? And then we're going to put this hand on a block, and her hand could be closer to her left foot. It could be, honestly, when I cue this up for folks, I like the block kind of like hip width apart from the front foot, because I find if it's too close to this foot, the torso leans over in that direction, right? So it's more challenging, but yeah, so you guys get the idea. Okay, so I'll do a detailed video on this, but I just want to do a quick gut test. Okay, so I think maybe last pose let's look at together before we break. And I'll do videos on Janu Shirshasana because it should not be overlooked. It is like, oh, I love this pose. But just to stick with the standing poses is Prasarita. Did Amanda or Monica have someone here?
I had Maria H.
Okay, Maria H. Whoops.
And I actually had a question on this pose.
Awesome. Okay, let's do it.
So, in this one, in Maria's, you don't see it, but the question I have is, are you pulling, are your elbows supposed to be like pulling back between your legs, or are they supposed to be flared out? Or does it matter?
Oh, good question. In an ideal world, they're pulling back between your legs.
Okay. So with Maria, to me, it looks like she's doing a modification, which is great, but I would have her move her hands. Instead of having her hands back, I'd have her have her hands more in front, dropping directly down so that she has shoulder, elbow, wrist alignment in front of her.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I love that she's doing a modification. What is she prioritizing instead of getting her forehead farther down to the ground? What's she prioritizing?
Keeping her, lengthen their spine and keeping a neutral, her neck, she's not jacking anything up there. So yeah, looks really good. It's just that she just needs to move her hands forward so that she has that straight alignment. Yeah. I'm not as concerned about it because she's not putting any weight on her hands, or she's putting nominal weight in her hands. But yeah, I agree. I like where your head's at. I think this looks so good, right? Her toes are in a little bit. Her heels are flared wide. So that's helping her find a little bit of internal rotation, right? Because here we're thinking of the inner thighs spinning back. She has incredible length in the spine. It looks like her legs are engaged. So the biggest thing that I see when I look at students in this pose is the spaghetti legs, right? Like their legs aren't really, they're not hugging muscle to bone. So that's going to be a lot about cueing the feet, right? Like press your toes down, press your heels down, suck up through the arches of your feet kind of thing. And yeah, her head is in line with the tailbone. Like, yeah, looks really, really, really nice. So I'll do a video on this one. With Lauren, she's doing a variation where the hands are interlaced behind her back, but her shoulders are crowding her ears. Can you see this? So we want her to glide her shoulders down and back, and then take the fist overhead, right? So that can be really tricky for students in this position because they're upside down, they're a little disoriented. So you can often say like, slide your shoulder blades towards your seat, or slide your shoulder blades towards the ceiling. Or I like to say, let gravity have your head, let gravity have your torso, but gravity doesn't get to have your shoulders, right? So regardless of what variation, but especially in this one with the fist. Does that make sense to people? Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. And another really great like sequencing note about this one is that, if you have people stand up, they're in a really nice position if they just turn one foot forward to be in heel to arch alignment, to do warrior two and side angle and things, right? So if you were teaching a beginner and you didn't want to do a lot of stepping through from downward facing dog, you could maybe have them turn this foot forward. We'll talk more about sequencing later, but you could have them do warrior two, side angle, triangle, have them come up, turn all toes to the side wall, maybe do a forward fold to, I don't want to say rest, but to stretch the backs of the legs because we're actively engaging even in our stretches. Come back up and then do it to the back of the room. Does that make sense? Last thing I'll say here about all the forward folds, because in Janu Shirshasana as well, my kind of rule with folding forward, because again, if you just always have length in the spine, you might never get the hamstring stretch you're so deeply craving, right? Because it kind of forces you to pull back a little bit. So a good rule of thumb is what I like to do is if I find length in the spine first, right? So fold forward with a long spine, whether it's Janu Shirshasana or maybe Prasarita, and then inhale, half lift. So even in like Janu Shirshasana where you're on the ground, you can kind of do an inhale, half lift, and then exhale and allow the upper body to round and come into flexion. So you can get that kind of like sweet stretch that you're craving. So it's not like we can't ever round the spine and kind of relax and go into a deeper hamstring stretch, but we have to find length in the spine first. Is that helpful, or does that make sense? Because sometimes people are like, well, everyone is just, rounding. So again, that's fine, but just try to get them to find length in the spine first, if best you can. Okay, cool. So videos to come with a lot more detail on all of these, but great job, practice teaching. And again, we're just trying to refine our body reading skills on these live calls. Let's do our closing meditation with Monica. If she's with us.
Okay.
She is.
I'm here.
Oh,
sorry. My
Okay.
screen is going black, so I'll just keep talking if that happens. Okay, so I hope this meditation I hope this meditation creates a sense of calm, clarity, and contentment. Sit back, relax, body upright. Find a soft gaze. And when you are ready, close the eyes. Take a deep breath. In through the nose and out of the mouth. In through the nose and out of the mouth. In through the nose and out of the mouth. And as you continue to breathe deeply, feel the body pressing down, the weight of gravity pressing down on the seat, pressing down into the floor. Settle into this space around you, allowing sounds to come and go. Start to notice the movement of the breath in your body, the rising and the falling sensation. If you can't feel it, maybe gently place your hand against your stomach. Notice if the breath has gotten longer, shorter, deeper, shallow. Allowing your thoughts to come and go. Realizing if you're being distracted in this moment, just let go. Let go of the thinking. Gently come back to the breath. In through the nose and out of the mouth. In through the nose and out of the mouth. In through the nose and out of the mouth. Bringing the attention back to the body, back to that feeling of weight, back to the sounds and the smells around you. Place your left hand and then your right hand on your heart center. Take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And congratulate yourself for showing up today. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. I needed that. It's great. Okay, so we're going to split into jettas just for like 5-6 minutes. And we've kind of been doing this with all the classes all week. Talk about cueing Parsva Konasana, so that's the side angle pose, to Trigonasana, to Ardha Chandrasana. So those poses link really nicely together because they all have open hips and that heel to arch alignment. And then if you have time, do Adho Mukha Svanasana to plank to Chaturanga. And if your group's been coming like all week, or I don't know, if you've already done the cues for side angle to triangle to half moon, just do practice it, talk about saying down dog to plank to Chaturanga, and see if you can have a demo student, if someone's willing to do it as you guys practice saying the cues, and try to also say inhale and exhale, right? So it would be inhale, plank, right? Exhale, yeah. So just practice for a little bit, and then we'll come together at like 3 minutes of or whatever, just to answer any last questions. And if you need to drop off, this is the moment to drop off. Otherwise, off we go.